Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would go over the latest changelogs which have happened to the game, since obviously with Operation Shipyard starting, I've been a little bit lackadaisical when it comes to these changelogs, so why not just get them, out of the way. Some of these changelogs are about 9 to 10 days old, but generally they do affect quite substantial things in the game, therefore we're going to go through them, because of course they're important. So the first one is update 1.91.0.110. This mainly dealt with flight model changes when it came to top tier. So the first thing is the F100D and the Super Mr. B2. They implemented the afterburner chamber mechanics with more accurate dependencies on altitude and speed, similar to aircraft such as the MiG-19, F-4C, and MiG-21, introduced in the 191 major updates. Afterburner thrust increased at high speed, implemented a more accurate algorithm for mouse aim, overall handling increased. So that made them easier to fly, basically, and at least from the people who I've talked to, when it comes to, those planes, basically they've made them a little bit quicker, especially at high speeds. They've made the acceleration overall better, and also the planes themselves just feel a little bit more realistic. So overall, positive changes for them. The T2, the increased maximum lift coefficient and critical angle of attack, simulating a vortex lift effect that offers due to a vortex from the leading edge of the wings root section. Overall handling increased and implemented much more accurate algorithm for mouse aim. Afterburner chamber mechanics are now more accurate, so therefore the afterburner thrust increased at high speed. So it seems like very similar changes to the T2 compared to the F100 and the Super Mr. Hopefully this means that there will be a reason to use these machines over the F4C and subsequent machines. The F4C itself, the corrected correspondence of the aircraft at takeoff, the reduced excessively abrupt pitching downward corresponding to the aircraft on approaching supersonic speeds, the so-called Mach-Tuck effect has been corrected, increased maximum rate of roll. I think this is talking about the little glitch that was in-game, where when you hit, just make sure my desk doesn't fall apart, when you hit a speed of around about 0.98 Mach or 0.97 Mach, the game would try and force you into the ground, and it was very weird, but once you hit Mach, it seemed to fix. So at least according to this, it says that they fixed it. I know people are still having issues when it comes to these problems, and when it comes to what seems, in my opinion, to be just desync issues, but then again, I'm not fully, in the know about all of those things, but it just seems like from my end, what is happening is you have two people which on their side it looks different to what is actually happening on the server side. Therefore, you get people moving like a meter across, or you get people which seem to like phase through space, which when they take either a ping loss or something like that. So it's just it's an unfortunate thing, and hopefully that whole issue does get sorted out for people. I would definitely say it's not fully sorted, but at least there have been steps towards it. And also, I haven't really seen the issue at any area of the game apart from top tier, but that might just be something that I'm personally, seeing. The I-16 Type 17 for China, now the incorrect naming of the engine of the vehicle has been fixed, so that's good. They fixed the engine. I wonder if they've actually fixed the flaps on that machine. I can't remember if it was that one or the other one. I think it was the Type 5 that had the issue, but, it's nice to see the Type 17 is fixed, at least is fixed with the incorrect naming. But I've got a feeling, let's see, yeah, the flaps are still busted on this thing. So maybe at some point they'll be fixed, but if you didn't know, so with this I-16 Type 5, which is the middle I-16 of the first three, you can see that I'm setting my flaps to landing and nothing is happening. Like the nothing is moving. So either this thing has incorrectly labeled itself with flaps or without flaps, and it just isn't there, but you can see nothing is going on when I try and change the flaps. It doesn't even seem to affect the flight performance. So yeah, hopefully at some point that'll be fixed. We'll see in the future. The other fixes, the KV-122, a bug where A bug where no animation for the left track has been fixed. Now that is a sentence. So it seems like they've lined up the track. So we can actually just test that. I think I have the KV-122, or maybe not. Might be one of those vehicles that I just said no to. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So the KV-122, in my opinion, I've fallen out of favor with the 122mm, especially now playing it again in the Chinese tech tree, and that's just because of the fact that it doesn't penetrate everything that it requires to. So you can see, yeah, the left track is working again. So that's lovely. Right. Make sure to put a big hole in that Panzer II while we go along. The next one, the Project 159 and the Project 35, a bug where the launcher animations in X-ray did not show, has been fixed. Well, that's lovely. One thing I do want to check, actually, while I'm here, because one thing that I really liked on the dev server, oh, wrong one, was that the little propellers on the Type 4 Model 4 moved, but it looks like they're not moving anymore. Hopefully that gets changed, because that was just a really nice little animation that we saw in the hangar. The Fletcher DD445, the incorrect position of the torpedoes on the torpedo tubes has been fixed. They did like an overall change, I remember, for the torpedo tubes, and made it so the torpedo tubes themselves actually lined up with the torpedoes coming out. So to see that happening with the Fletcher is good. Just means that it brings it in line with everything else. Now on to the server updates for the 1st to the 10th, 2019. This was a bunch of different changes, mainly to ground vehicles. Actually, I think only to ground vehicles, on top of the changes to top tier air that we saw. So the Leopard 2K, it lost its night vision. The type of night vision modification has been changed from thermal imaging to infrared, so it lost its thermals, even though somehow the Leopard A1A1044 has thermals, but we don't question these things for some reason. The Centauro Morn, the Baglet Panzer 57, the type of night vision modification has been changed from infrared to thermal, so that means that an 8.0? No. Yes, an 8.0 vehicle has access to thermals, so good luck with that. You can see it right here. And also, the other thing, remember, the Centauro with the most recent updates also got access to scouting. So the Centauro can literally do everything when it comes to mechanics on the battlefield. What a wonderful machine. The AMX-30 modification for IR infrared night vision has been added. Nice one. The shot Caldel 8, Type 61, Type 87, 75, 75 MLRS. The modification for IR infrared driver night vision has been added. I have no idea why you'd need that for the MLRS, but overall that's nice. At least you'll be able to see from the driver's position what is going on. The M8 LAC shoulder stabilizer has been added. I believe that is referring to, yes, that is referring to the Chinese one, so now that brings it in line with the American one. The M60A1 AOS, so that is the add-on stabilizer version. The mass of the tank has been changed from 47.6 to 48 tons, so this will make it a little bit heavier, so therefore a little bit slower in acceleration. Shouldn't really change it too much. The Centurion Mark 10, the thickness of the additional armor plate at the front has been changed from 44 to 51 millimeters. Okay, so a little bit of an increase. The thickness of the gun manlet has been changed from 200 to 152. Okay, that's quite a big decrease. And there's the source. So the Cent Mark 10. Yes, Cent Mark 10 is an interesting one because it always used to be able to bounce really weird shots off of it. And why do I not have full... Ooh, so it gets actually night vision. Well, that's nice for a 7.0 vehicle. So they're talking about this area here. So this used to be 200, and if you got down tiered, especially into like Tigers or sometimes, you know, other machines like the Japanese, and they only had AP, you could bounce a lot of shells off this turret. But over time, people have either figured out you can just shoot here, or you can just shoot here, or they've pretty much figured out, actually no, you can't really shoot the upper glaciers because it's got this add-on 51 and also the 76 under it, but most people just shoot it here. where it is 152, and all you have to do is just pen it, and you kill the 3 crew inside. So, yeah, you can always lower glacis it if you feel lucky, but overall it used to be quite a tough nut to crack for a medium, but nowadays not so much. The T80U, the minimum sight magnification value, has been changed from 3.6 to 12 times to 2.7 to 12 times, so therefore the initial sight magnification will be closer to you, meaning that the difference between your right clicks will be slightly more. The M247, the good old Sergeant York, the turret traverse speed guidance speed has been changed from 60 to 90 degrees per second. Bloody hell, that's quick. The sight magnification has been changed from 1.5 to 6 times to a fixed 12 times. Okay, so the Sergeant York has just become a much more fun machine, because you can now just fiddle-diddle it about and just fly it around the place, which should be very fun. 90 degrees per second. 90 degrees per second is insane. I'm sure that means when it's fully upgraded, but still, look how, ooh, look at that. Look how quick that is. Also, it's obviously got the doesn't have the animation when you turn off the radar yet, but I'm sure that'll come in time. When it comes down to it. For some reason my thing is just not targeting that at all, doesn't feel like it. The good old Sergeant York, so yeah, great turret rotation on it, which is lovely. Whoop. Having a little bit of struggle with the radar there. Lovely to see it gain that, and also the magnification. The 3.7 centimeter Panzer Grenadier, the Flak 36, Flak 43, initial shell speed has been changed from 740 to 770, so a little bit of a change there, giving it, I suppose, a little buff. The T25 M36, an error in the designation of the default AP shell has been corrected. Default shell for this vehicle is the M77. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, they've just, changed the designation. It doesn't change the shell. There's no point in using the shell over, like, the APC, BC that is involved. So, if you don't know what I mean, so the T25, you can see it has this M77 shot, and then it has the M82 shot. The M82 shot now pens more, and also it does more damage when it comes to explosive mass. So the idea before was it would be a trade-off. So you either get the more penning round, but it does less damage, or you get the round which does more damage and you pen less. But now it's like, well, I just take this, and obviously the APCR, it doesn't do enough damage overall. So maybe that's the choice now. Which one do you take? The Type 63, the modifications Windows bug has been fixed, where the heat shell icon was displayed out of its borders. So if you didn't know, luckily they fixed this, because this was a problem on the dev server, and was a problem for another vehicle as well. But basically you had to scroll across to get to the heat FS of this vehicle. It was over here somewhere, so instead of just extending the box, instead you had to scroll. Luckily now they've fixed that by basically moving some of the stuff around the place. The sound events of explosions and gunshots now have a brighter attack. Virtual sound channels loading of the sound engine has been optimized. That's always good. The sound for me now in game is a hell of a lot better than it was at the start of update 1.91. I think for the last week or so I've been running into a lot of very nice sounds to hear. The only problem now is I feel like I'm using my ears more than my eyes to spot things, and that's completely fine. That just means a general change in tactics. The volume balance for ground vehicle guns, explosions, and some aircraft engines has been slightly corrected. A bug with swapped male and female voice packages in the sound menu has been fixed. That was kind of funny when that was going on. The search filters for camouflages from night vision and Imperial Navy trophies have been added to the market page. The list of filters will be updated when the new trophies are added. One thing that needs to be done about the markets, they need to actually put in a proper settings option instead of just saying that it's in beta. It's been around for at least a year now. It is time to move on from that stage. Console users now have all the recipes for creating items from trophies with camouflages in one tab in the workshop. Choosing recipes that belong to only one trophy can be selected in the drop-down list. So once again, making the general practices of the game easier for its players is always good to hear. Then there was a little changelog on the 4th of the 10th, which they added this new feature when it comes to the Operation Shipyard event. So if you go to the assembly scheme and let's say you want to craft this, you have two options. You can either craft it, it'll take the full assembly time, or you can craft it instantly for a little bit more resources. So you can see normally it would just be 6 and 2, whereas here it's 7 and 3. So it just means that if you want to craft stuff quickly, you have to pay a price, but it means that you can craft it quicker. Once again, more options is good. I saw a lot of people complaining about this, basically saying, well, people can just pay through it. Well, you could do that anyway with the Gaijin market. Now it's just another option for people. The last one, which was today, was 1.91.0.132, and what this added was a bunch of different things. So the first one is the MBK-161. The bomb mortar modification has been moved to the default weaponry preset, and this was a little bit odd when it first came out. If we just go to the Navy, so you can see here that it's now, I believe it's attached to this bit, if I remember. Yes, the mortar is attached to here. And I wonder if the mortar has sound now, because that was a problem when I was looking at it the other day. The mortar itself just had no sound. It didn't make anything when it fired. Nope, still no sound. So you can see the shell is going up. You can see the shell go up. Before you can even see the shell go up, so you know that's good. that's a lot better. You can see the guy turning. Like, all the animations and stuff are generally pretty good, but the issue is there's no sound from the mortar itself. So that would be nice to see that implemented at some point. A bug in the ship's visibility system, which allowed ships to detect each other through non-transparent obstacles, such as rocks or islands at long range, in some cases has been fixed. So that's good. You know, you want it to be realistic for everyone, at least when it comes to being able to spot. The damage model changes. So this is a big one for large ships. The damage model for damage... The damage model for damage caused by torpedoes has been fixed. In accordance with the historical experience of battles at sea, all larger ships can now survive several torpedo attacks depending on where they detonate on the ship's hull. For example, an explosion in the vicinity of the ammunition magazine will highly likely result in their detonation and contribute to the destruction of the ship. However, hits in other parts of the hull will not be fatal if the ship is fully operational and whole and has a sufficient number of capable crew members. So the idea is they're making they're basically making it so on torpedoes it isn't just a one-shot, one-kill. So you don't just hull break a ship when you hit it. And we're talking about large ships here, so we're talking about like light cruisers, heavy cruisers, stuff like that. Smaller ships such as PT boats are gonna still get one shot by torpedoes just because of the explosive mass. I think overall this is a positive change, especially when they've, you know, as they've said here, if you look at historical precedent, especially for light cruisers and heavy cruisers, there generally isn't many which only get hit by one torpedo. Normally there is at least several hits to machines before they are fully out of the battle or fully sunk. A lot of machines that you'll find will be hit by torpedoes and actually still be able to survive, not exactly fight on, but at least get away from the battle area and be able to be repaired or scuttled depending on, you know, their situation. So making it now that you have to kind of aim torpedoes for certain parts of the ship, I think is very good. And on top of this as well, it means that there is just a little bit more of a tactical side to larger ships. So because if you see a torpedo coming to you, you know it's just not an insta-death. Instead, you can try and make it so it hits a certain part of your ship, even if you can't avoid it, to keep yourself alive. I think this is all good. The definition of the ammunition magazine has now been fixed. They were excessively vulnerable to kinetic damage and shrapnel, and now magazines can withstand more hits. For the instantaneous detonation of magazines of a medium size, it will now require 2 direct hits with an AP shell of a caliber up to 152 millimeters. A direct hit by a heavier shell, 180 to 203, will cause the ammunition magazine to explode immediately. So basically, They're making ammunition overall stronger, so if you just get penetrated where your ammunition is now, it won't just be a one-shot, one-kill for the majority of guns that you have. There are still many machines out there, such as the heavy cruisers, the Hipper, the Megami, the Krasnys, that will be able to still one-shot you, but at the same time, this means that for light cruisers and destroyers, it isn't just going to be a one-shot, one-kill. I generally think this is a positive change, but at the other side of it, it still adds to the issue, which I've been talking about for a long time, that these types of ships do not match up well against each other. A destroyer does not match up well against a light cruiser. A light cruiser does not match up well against a heavy cruiser, and these two changes here increase the divide between those types of vehicles. Now, the way to address this is how we've done it in ground forces, where you throw in new modifications such as artillery, smoke, scouting, stuff like this, to try and push the different types of vehicles apart from each other and give them defined roles. In ships, you don't really have any of that yet. So therefore, for me, there needs to be defined roles for these machines, otherwise it will just be whoever has the biggest stick will win. The visual display. The lack of visual representation of hits and shell explosions at long distances has been fixed. Well, that's good. You know, it's always nice to see what you're hitting. These sounds, the frequency responses of the audio mix to achieve a more natural sound has been adjusted. Lovely stuff. Changes to the logic of limiting sound events to avoid non-sounding elements close to the listener have been made. That's nice. So hopefully that's talking about, you know, the clipping of sounds, which I've talked about many times. Hopefully that means that has been lowered. Unnecessary mechanical sounds from the player's aircraft cannons in first-person view from cockpit have been deleted. That's true, but there are some other sounds which are still there. And let's see if I can actually replicate it. Because when I was in my Boston, what I would do is generally to switch between the modes, I would go from my turreted mode to my cockpit mode and then out to third person again like this, right? So as you can see, here is the turrets firing, and then we switch to the cockpit. Can you hear that? You can hear that sound, right? Which is it's technically, if you were in first person mode for that gun, that's what you would hear. But at the same time, you're not in first person mode, you're in the cockpit, and you can see how far away the gunner is from the cockpit, so you shouldn't hear it right next to your head. So hopefully stuff like that gets changed, but if that is basically what they're talking about, then hopefully that means that they know it's an issue and it's been working, you know, they're working on it. A bug where, while watching a player with thermal imaging turned on the viewer, could see the thermal image has been fixed. Oh, okay. So, okay, fair enough. The excessive damage to bases caused by missiles in air battles has been fixed. So what they've actually done with this one, and it's not just missiles, it's rockets as well. So Father Gentlespeed did a bit of data mining on this, and what he came up with is they added armor to bases. So now rockets, which don't have, you know, a lot of armor penetration, they hardly do any damage to bases anymore. So this, in my opinion, this is to counter one thing and one thing only, really. And now it's one of those things where the Phantom has access to a ridiculous amount of rockets somewhere. I think it might be these ones, the Zunis, where it has 48 sets of Zunis. Maybe it's this one with the 228. I'm not exactly sure which one it is that people are using, but pretty much what you could do in simulator and also realistic is just take off, flog your rockets at a base and just kill it, or flog your rockets at an airfield and do a crazy amount of damage. And what they would do is you would be able to, you know, end matches really quickly. And you can do the same thing with bombs, but it's a little bit harder to do. So, you know, this doesn't change the fact that you can still do it. It's just the fact that with rockets and missiles that made it a little bit harder. And I think that's mainly because we're going to we already have a lot of vehicles like the F4U7 for the French, and also machines for the Americans, the AD4, the AM1, which have a lot of a lot of rockets, and it's going to get to a point where we're just going to see crazy amounts of secondary armaments, which will end battles really quick. And this is a way to try and stop that from happening. It's not going to stop it from happening because people will just find another method, and the other method is bombs, and they'll just use bombs instead. Volokolamsk. So Volokolamsk has been removed from rotation in random ground battles. It's gone. And also, I don't think it's just Volokolamsk. I think it's also surroundings of Volokolamsk, because if you go to Tank Realistic Battles and you look for, Volokolamsk, it's just gone. Right, it doesn't exist anymore. So surroundings is gone, Volokolamsk overall is gone, and therefore it's just gone. It's gone from rotation. So the people who were not happy with that map, it's been removed. Also, the Afghanistan map has been removed from rotation in Air AB battles, so that one's gone. And the Boulogne-sur-Mer map has also been removed from rotation in Air RB battles. So what this tells me is, with this new map rotation filter, which is of course one of the new things that they brought in most recently. You can ban a map and you can dislike some maps. They've basically looked at the major formats, Air AB, Air RB, and ground battles in general. So that's ground AB and ground RB. And what they've done is, okay, so the vast majority of people are banning these specific maps. Let's take them out of rotation and then maybe reform them and bring them back in. Now, I think this is a positive change, and they did say with the new map rotation filter, they would be taking ideas from the community, and if the community doesn't like specifically certain maps, they're going to remove them and then have a rethink, and that's what we're seeing here in action. So when people tell me, your actions, they don't mean anything to Gaijin, nobody listens to the community, here is concrete proof that that is happening right now. The actions that you've taken in game when it comes to the map rotation filter are having positive effects for the community overall. So just don't, make sure to take that as a positive instead of, oh, well, these maps were awful anyway, so they should have been taken out. Yes, but now we have concrete evidence on why they're being taken out, and hopefully they get reformed into something better. Whereas before, it was opinion-based. Now we know, what's going on. The hull break mechanics for the following vehicles are now possible with 100 to 105 millimeter heat shells, previously caused only by 120 millimeter and above heat shells. Right, I'm going to say the hull break mechanic needs a... Right, so if we have a look at something, okay, so let's go to the War Thunder Wiki, the good old War Thunder Wiki. War Thunder Wiki is generally pretty good for information. It has a few issues when it comes to being out of date for certain things. So hopefully that means that, let's see. The main issue for something like hull break is this thing should have its own channel, right? It should have, so not its own channel, it should have its own area of the wiki, which you can just look at stuff in. Because when I look at the hull break stuff on the wiki, it already says here, hull break can be caused by being hit with HE or chemical shells for calibers of 105 millimeters or higher, and then being hit with kinetic AP rounds for calibers of 120 millimeters or higher. So do you see the problem here? You see the big problem here? How, according to the wiki, this has already been in place since update 1.89, so, about half a year ago or something like that. But now we're getting confirmation that that's not the case, and now it is possible for heat shells, which are chemical shells, to be able to hull break. It's madness. There needs to be a dedicated page on the wiki talking about hull break, because it's all over the place, or at least it feels like it's all over the place when it comes to this mechanic. And I generally agree with the mechanic, but there is so much weirdness around it when it comes to what do you need to hit on a specific vehicle to hull break it, what rounds are you able to use to be able to hull break stuff. All of these things need to be actually quantified on a specific page on the wiki or somewhere. These are all the vehicles that are affected. I'm not going to go through them. The one thing, but you can. Well, actually, no. Let's just read them out, just to be fully done. So you have the AMX-10RC, the AMX-30 Roland, the Black Panzer 57, Gepard, Florak Panzer 1 Roland, RU-251, TAM, Orbal HVM, Centauro, Centauro Ramor, Orbal 74, M113A1 TOW, R3T106FA, Saddam 25, Type 16, Type 60 ATM. Where's the other Saddam on this? Why is there only one Saddam? Where's the Saddam Mistral? Anyway, the Type 87, Type 89, the Falcon, FV102, FE438, the Warrior, Stormer, ADATS, M163, M247, the Sergeant York, M3 Bradley, M50, M551, M901, 9P149, the Sturm S, the BMP-1, BMP-2, 2S6 Tunguska, ZSU-23-4 Shilka, the ZSU-57-2, Object 120, Object 685, Object 906, and SU-100P. So pretty much all ranked 4/5/6/7 light vehicles. You know what's missing from this list? You know what's very much missing from this list? Where is it? It's German, and it's a gift vehicle, or it's an event vehicle. It's this asshole of a thing. Why in the hell does this not have hull brake? I thought the modifiers for hull brake was that it needed less than 35 millimeters of armor. It needed, it needed a key component to it. Well, that's the damn breech, or the transmission. Whatever you want to do, it's a key component. This thing is one of the hardest things to kill in the game because of the way that it is set up. Even with this 12 millimeters of armor, it is, enough for a bunch of machine guns to not go through. Playing British vehicles against this thing is a nightmare. It takes you like 3 to 4 to maybe 6 shots to kill it, instead of 1 to 2, which it should. Whereas this thing, with its 88mm at 5.7, can go through anything that you see. Anything that you see. It is one of the most crazy vehicles when it comes to the idea that it doesn't have hull brake. Why does this thing not have hull brake? It fits every criteria under what hull brake is supposed to stand for, but it doesn't have it. It's very odd to me. Very odd. And it isn't included in this list. The last thing is the FE510, the M3 Bradley, BMP-1 and BMP-2 section of the hull and turret armor were not included in the hull destruction mechanics. These elements have now been included in these mechanics. So now these machines are easier to kill overall. Basically, they've made lighter machines overall easier to kill, which I'm generally okay with. A lot of these you really shouldn't be getting shot in anyway. But if you are getting shot and you are in something like an Orbal, I'm fine with it, taking a hit from a 105 and just instantly dying. When it comes to the hull brake mechanic in its entirety, it needs to be more well defined. We need some form of either wiki article, or there just has to be something out there which lays out exactly what hull brake is. Because right now, there are conflicting sources. When we look at like the early hull brake ideas, when they were first implemented, then we have a look at the changelogs, then you have a look at the wiki, and then you have a look at this. They all have different narratives around this. So it would be much nice just to have a concrete position on what hull brake is on somewhere like the wiki. Anyway, those were the changelogs for the last, I suppose, 10 days. Overall, some pretty positive stuff, mainly top tier stuff, but that seems to be the area that's having the most issues in the game, so it makes sense that it is being focused on. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.